You're going to make a material with two shaders to represent the rusty part near the corners and the unrusted parts on the faces. So first of all, open the shading workspace. So you've got the shader at the bottom. Add a node with the rusty texture, and we're going to feed the colour into the base colour of the shader and also feed it through basically something to convert it to black and white, taking the value of the colour and using that as the height for the bump using the normal bump system. Then add a second shader, and this is going to be the white or silvery surface away from the corners. So also add a mix shader to take the input from each of the two shaders. One is white and one is rusty. So as you can see, the result is white shader is being mixed over the top of the rusty one. So now we need to find, using the geometry, which parts of the object are near to the corners. So we're going to use a property of the geometry called pointiness. But you'll see there are problems with this. The first one is we want to make the change from pointiness to non-pointiness quite sharp, so we use the colour ramp to steepen the transition. But we also want the pointiness to drop away, so we make it as a band, because basically pointiness goes from an extreme value where it's going inwards to an extreme value where it goes out, and we want the transition to happen where the material is flat. So the problem is it didn't show because there weren't enough vertices, and the pointiness depends on the vertex. So basically we've subdivided the cube into a higher number of vertices so that the differentiation can happen across each of the surfaces. So now that we've been feeding the pointiness, sharpened pointiness near the edges into the base colour, once we get this working nicely, we can then use this value as the mixing factor in the shader mixer. So we want it to be mainly black, so that'll be a value of 0, and then just white near the edge. Then we mix that into the blending factor, and we don't want to have that value going into the middle of the white or silvery surface away from the edges. You can see it's not blending sharply enough. You can see the rustiness peeping through. So we don't want it to be completely uniform. We want it to look a bit patchy. So we take just the noise value and combine it with the pointiness value, so that we end up with some areas which are mainly rusty and some areas which are mainly white. But we want a kind of uneven transition between them. We can see that still some of the rustiness is showing through on the faces, so we need to move the colour ramp to adjust the point at which the transition takes place, and we do this by taking the value after the point to note here is that this only works with the cycle. The geometry pointiness only works with the cycles. You have to change in the render settings to use the cycles render engine.